hope you guys are having a fantastic week. My name is Danny James, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to create this particle aura trail effect for music videos inside of Adobe After Effects. This is what you're going to learn in this video. We're going to have some particle trailing the subject and following him, and which I think is a really cool effect. I also have another example that I did with TJ over here. He's on a golf turf. There's some particles following the character, and that is the basics of what you're going to be learning here. So what you want to start with, let me delete these layers. I have Mabu on this clip right here, and right on top of my base clip is my rotoed selection of the subject. So the first thing that you'll need to do, you need to rotoscope the subject from your background, put it in a different layer. Then from here, we need to disable the background so that you can just see the rotoed selection of the subject, and we need to export these individually first so that you can work with it later on. Go to File, Export, add to Render Queue. Check your settings so that we export it into a Photoshop sequence. Make sure it's RGB and alpha enabled so that it has the transparency, and then just output and click where you want these to go. I have already done that, and here's my file. All you need to do is just right click and import. So mine is in this folder, as you can see. Just click on the first one, click import. Make sure to choose pre-multiplied with color so that it comes as RGB with alpha. I will cancel just because I already have that in my project bin. Here it is. Before we drag these into our comp, we need to make sure that they match in terms of frame rate. So my composition right now is on 24 frames per second. I'll right click on this Photoshop file, go to interpret footage, and you can see it's also on the same frame rate. Assuming it was on a different frame rate, that is around 30 frames, if I dragged it into my comp, you see it comes short of the entire comp because it's just running at a different frame rate. So by simply fixing the frame rate back to 24 and dragging it into your comp, it should last for the same entire amount of time that we exported. Afterwards, right click and create a new solid here. Place it below the rotoed selection of the subject. For now, I will disable the roto brush selection of the subject and keep it right above everything else. So we are working with the black solid and the Photoshop sequence that we imported, and we also have our background here. Click on the solid, go to your effects, add particle world, particle playground, sorry, add it to the solid. With the particle playground, we are going to be dealing with the canon, the layer map, and the gravity only. So just take note of these three subfolders that you're going to concentrate on. First, we need to change these values back to 0. Under canon, put the random spread to 0, velocity to 0, and velocity random spread to 0. Come back to the layer map, choose the Photoshop sequence that we imported, which is also on our comp, and then ensure that the offset is on absolute. And right now we have this pixelated image that drags downwards. So if you have something like this initially, you are on the right track. Now we just need to make this pixelated image separate a little bit, and that's why we need to change the offset, time offset parameter. Change it to 0.01 or 0.02 or minus 0.01 or minus 0.02 respectively. Just work within the ranges that I'm providing on my screen and the ones that I'm using, and then from there you can build up from it. If we scroll around, you can see it's creating all these multiple images just by simply offsetting the time. Next, we'll need to change the value for the force and increase it so that there is a greater pull on these particles. And then you can also alter the direction so that these particles also go backwards. So I'll change this value to, take it to around 270 so that they push backwards. As I had mentioned earlier, these two parameters, which is the force and the direction, are also closely related to the velocity and direction under the canon. So you'll use these two to also fine-tune the direction a little bit more. So I will increase the velocity once more here, okay, and then I will also fine-tune the direction so that these particles go backwards. If I play this now, you can see what's happening. Now we just need to fix something. We need to come to these values over here under the layer map, which is the edge and feather than. Start by tweaking the feather so that it dictates how many of these materials still remain on the screen after the subject has passed. So try to keep these at around 1 point something, and then for the older and younger turn, try to keep these at around -0.1 or anything near that, so that these materials kind of dissolve once the subject has passed. One more thing that I have noticed is that the particles are way ahead of the subject. So what you need to do, you just need to find the time offset. As I told you, I will now try 0.02, and now I think it's in the right place. It's just a matter of tweaking the value for the older and younger turn, which I will leave at -0.11 should give me something good. And now if I play this back, you can see the particles being formed and dissipating in thin air. Just try to look at these values and fine-tune them around this range that I'm showing on my screen. Next, we're going to add a few effects to complete this look. Before we do that, let's re-enable our rotode selection of the subject, which is on top of everything else. And then let's change the blending mode for our black solid to screen and the PSD screen also, so that you kind of have an image of what we are creating. Go to your effects, add a vector blur, CC vector blur into your black solid. Increase this amount a turn up to around 30, and then you can choose any type, but I prefer constant length. It gives the blur a little bit more subtlety. Next, we can add a tint just to determine the color of the aura particles, and then map the black to whichever color that you'd like to make these particles emit. I'll go with this yellow dust for now, and then I can go back to my effects, and now I can add a glow. You can use the inbuilt After Effects glow. I just prefer using Universe glow instead. It gives me more of the glow that I'm looking for. I'll go to this frame where I can see these particles. I will increase the threshold just a bit to reduce the amount of glow. If I play this back, we have these particles and they are looking a bit more realistic. One more thing that you can do to these particles, you can also add a curves effect to the solid, place it above the vector blur, and then I will maybe increase the highlights for it so that they are a little bit more brighter, and so are the shadows. So this will depend with your footage, of course. You can always come back to your tint and change the color. If you want something else, I'll go for an orangish vibe. Yeah, this complements the scene altogether. And this is our final image. Looks really good. One of the things that you'll want to look at are these parameters. Come back to your particle playground. Look at the older and younger turn and the edge feather under the layer map. Keep tweaking these values just to see what happens to your image. One other thing, look out for this position. In case your particle trails are a bit maybe in front of the subject, you can drag them backwards manually. You can see I've been able to change the position for that. You can also add keyframes for it in case you need to have this change over time. Just to cross-reference what I did in my other timeline with Lil TJ, you can look at the particle playground settings on my left hand side. They are more or less the same values, if not closer to each other. You might need to play around with these and find what works with your video depending on the movement of your subject, and if it's also a still frame. You can see this one was a still frame whereby the subject is running across, as opposed to this one, the subject is actually coming towards the screen. And that's a very easy way to create this particle aura trail effect for your music videos. I will have the project file for this tutorial up on my Gumroad in case you're interested in following and cross-referencing the small details that go into making this look. Once again, thank you for watching this video, and the easiest way to support this channel is by visiting my store at dannyjames.co for preset packs and LUTs that should level up your visuals. My name is Danny James. See you guys on the next video. Peace.